Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Stream.
Hello.
So imagine you are turning your life, your love of drawing into a career where your art lives on the big screen, inspiring kids and adults around the world. That dream might feel far away, but for many artists, it's closer than you think. So our guest today, Kelsey McDougall, has done exactly that. She went from being a student here at Wing Canvas to working on shows like Animaniacs with Titmouse and now at Brown Bag Studios. So she's lived the journey many of you are on, and she's here to share the lessons she's learned. Welcome in, Kelsey.
Thank you. Hello. Happy to be here.
Okay, so let's be honest. The artist path isn't easy. From battling perspective and technical skills to facing rejection, self-doubt, and the emotional challenge of critique. It can feel lonely, overwhelming, and uncertain. But Kelsey will pull back the curtain today on what it really takes to build an animation career and share her personal story of growth and resilience and give you an inside look at working in the industry. So you'll hear how to find the gaps in your skills, overcome setbacks, and thrive in a team of professionals.
Yep.
All right. So let's get started. So how are you today, Kelsey?
I'm good. It's a really nice Saturday. The weather's been great.
Nice.
Can't complain. We're past the heat wave.
Yeah. All right. Well, can you tell us a little bit about what your we're just going to start off with just like what your day-to-day life looks like.
Yeah, so working in animation for me is a pretty typical 9 to 5. It's not really glamorous or like super exciting once you're in it. Like I love doing it. But you pretty much are at your computer and you get, your background assignments and you have a deadline and you got to get them done, by Friday. So you're pretty much just at your computer painting or drawing, from 9 to 5. And then you go home and then you probably keep drawing if you're like me.
All right. So lots and lots of drawing. I think that's what we all aspire to do here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. So today what we're going to do is we're going to share Kelsey's success story. You're going to see all of her artwork, or as much as we could dig up, from when you were first started drawing to all the way to your professional career. So that's going to be really fun. And then we're going to share some of your best tips for breaking into the animation industry, as well as portfolio tips for landing a job in animation. So, and then if you are here towards the end, we're going to be doing a Q&A. So you'll have a chance to ask Kelsey any questions that you may have about life, about working in animation, and just general art questions. So feel free to put them in the chat. Mm-hmm. All right. So tell us about this, Kelsey.
Can you tell I had a crush on Chris Pine? Yeah. So as a kid, I always knew that I wanted to be in the arts. So until I was in grade 7 or 8, I wanted to be an actor, artist, writer, and poet. I couldn't narrow it down. I wanted to do everything. And when I was a kid, I used to live in Japan. And so these are from that time, wow. the Hawaii girl and the Picasso, the scary Picasso. And my school in Japan was pre-IB. So I had a very art focused class, and I got to learn all about art history and different artists. And it kind of made me obsessed. And I would drag my parents to different art museums as a kid. We had to go to everyone on the way and spend a couple hours just looking at Jackson Pollock and Matisse and Monet. So it's always been a big part of my life. And then, my Chris Pine, that's from when I started redrawing again. I kind of took a break as a kid, and then I started drawing again when I was 13. And I think this is one of my first drawings back. I did Chris Pine, I did Taylor Swift. I started just copying portraits. And that was my kind of artistic outlet until the end of high school.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny because now you're a background artist, but you started off your interest in portraits, right?
Yeah, I thought that you had to do to be good. A lot of my journey is me thinking oh, this is what you have to do to be good. My mindset changed slowly along the way, many, many times. I've, wanted to do storyboard. I wanted to do characters. I wanted to do like fine art painting, until, I found my true passion.
That's interesting. That the journey to where you're gonna end up is not a straight line.
Oh boy, no, not at
yeah.
all. But
Okay,
that's
so
what makes it exciting.
for sure, the journey is what we are all in a hurry. Like we're all in a hurry to get somewhere, but we forget to enjoy the journey. So we're just gonna do some rapid fire.
Okay.
We have a lot of images. Kelsey's art is so beautiful that we have a lot to go through. So I'm just going to share some of your early art.
Yeah. This is with you. I think this was my second round at Win Canvas. The first round I actually don't really have pictures of. It was mostly life drawing because I wanted to get into animation. It was I think I was like 19 when I first came to you. It was like after my first year of university because I went to a typical traditional university to get my Bachelor of Arts, and I didn't realize I wanted to be an artist at that time. I kind of didn't realize you could do it as a job outside of like fine art. And so I came to you after I watched Gravity Falls, and I was like, oh, people have to like make this show. people came up with this idea. I kind of think I want to do that. And I thought that I wanted to be a storyboard artist. So I wanted to learn life drawing because I realized so many of my skills were very much lacking, even though I was, I could do any sort of portraits. So that was fine. But once I got in front of a model, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So you helped me out with that. And then, I started getting into painting, and I worked only traditionally for a really long time. So some more portraits, getting into color. This is my portfolio for Seneca. So I put this together when I was in my fourth year at UBC. And so it was really difficult to sort of juggle my university studies with putting together like a full art portfolio. I don't know if I'd recommend doing that. But I applied to the illustration program, a lot different from the animation portfolio. Some of the same elements, life drawing, there were some hand drawings, you needed some still life stuff, and then also some illustrative, like personal work. And so the picture of the dreams sort of comic, that was like a 7 or 8 page comic I submitted. I submitted some gesture drawings from some life drawings that I went to at school. And I think that I got into the illustration program. My art wasn't the best, but I think I got in because they saw potential in my illustration portfolio. I had a lot of diverse art, and I think that they saw that I could go further with it and push it further. So that's a big thing with these portfolios, is like the potential.
And it's so interesting because you had applied to animation, but illustration was actually your first pick. So, yeah.
I didn't want to do another 4 years. That was like my main idea for getting into illustration. Seneca Animation's a 3-year program. Sheridan's a 4-year program. And I'd already done a 4-year degree. I was tired and I felt like I was getting old. So I wanted to get in and out as fast as possible. So I went into the illustration program. It's a 1.5 years straight. So it's 4 semesters total. And you do everything a little bit. Like, you do life drawing. You have to pretty much draw. Oh my God, those skeletons almost killed me. You have to draw every single bone, like in a rotation, the skeleton. Yeah. You got to muscle. We had a painting, like a still life painting class. We learned Illustrator, digital art, children's books. It was a lot, and it was very fast. It was very intense.
So Kelsey, you mentioned children's books, and I think when we last spoke, you said that this was really your childhood dream, and like you wanted to be a children's book illustrator.
Yeah.
And so when you chose illustration, did you have any idea that you would end up in animation?
Not really. Yeah, I had decided in my 4th year of university that I wanted to get into illustration because I was more interested in the storytelling aspect that you could do in illustration. I really wasn't interested in having to draw the same image slightly differently over and over again. That just sounded kind of like torture to me. So I thought that illustration would be a bit more on my alley. You get to tell a full story in like one image. And then my school specialized in, like, there's a couple specializations you could take. So I specialized in children's books. I believe you can also specialize in advertising illustration and visual development. and comics as well. So comics was another thing I was interested in. And so, yeah, I took the children's book route. I did a lot of traditional like gouache, watercolor, colored pencil work. This is like a sample. In one of our classes, we had to take an existing children's book and redraw it in our own style and like work on thumbnailing and layout and how to plan an entire, 24 to like 32 page book to make it work.
Interesting. And then, so now when you work in the animation industry, do you get storyboards or do you get like a plan for you to work with? So is it like similar? Do you feel like the skills translated directly into what
Yeah,
you're
I think
doing
there's
now?
a lot of skills that translate with composition, especially. You have to consider, as much as I want the backgrounds to shine and for everyone to look at them, they're not the main character. So you really have to like consider the action that's happening, what they're doing, what they're interacting with, where they're standing, and make sure that they read and like their actions read, and that's what people are looking at.
Yeah, and I find this very similar to a storyboard. You've got your values in there, you have the action, but everything is rough enough so that you're not investing too much time in the planning stage, which I think is really, really crucial for working in any creative industry like animation. Okay, cool. And so then you graduated.
Yeah, then I graduated.
And some pieces of
so this was like
show.
this is like the style I was working with at the time. It's a mix of gouache, color pencil, watercolor. It was very fun. I still want to get back into traditional, but one day.
One day, all right.
One day.
So then your first portfolio, so between the time you graduated and the time you got your first job in animation, I know you said a lot was going on. So I'm going to quickly show some of the work you made afterwards. And you can kind of tell us, like, what are some of the things that you did on your own to make your portfolio better? And how did you find yourself in animation?
Yeah, so after I graduated, it was, I graduated December 2019. So, we all kind of know what happened after that. I was living in my parents' back room, still trying to get into children's books. And I just had this like epiphany, this like thought that if I actually get a contract to make a book, I'm just going to be stuck in this back room alone. And that kind of made me sad and kind of scared. So I was like, I remember, wanting to get into animation, and it would be so cool to work in a team on something that I can immediately kind of see people enjoy. So yeah, I started pivoting. I bought a secondhand Cintiq and I started retraining myself in Photoshop, took some perspective classes, and just made it my full-time job. I was very lucky to be living with my parents and not having to immediately find a job. They were able to like kind of help me out for a bit. So I pretty much treated art like my full-time job until it became my full-time job. So yeah, this is a faux Hilda background. And this was pretty late in my journey, trying to figure out if I actually had the skills. Because you're on your own, you're by yourself in your room just drawing. And it's like, okay, I think I'm good enough to work in animation, but how do I know if I am? Okay, let's redraw, like let's create a whole new background in the style of a show and see if it looks good enough to actually be in the show. And so that's kind of what I would do to test myself.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people in the chat they recognized it immediately.
Yeah, I have a TikTok, and one of my TikToks did well a couple of years ago, and this was a background, and it was like a slideshow, and so many people comment, like hundreds of people are like, "Did you work on Hilda?" And it's like, "No, tricked you."
But this is the kind of stuff that you would need to do in the industry, and it's amazing that you actually did it on your own. And continued to practice and continued to push yourself to be more versatile, right?
With so like this is an example, the hallway, that was like a lineless, really like chunky brushes, like textured style, which is actually more like Animaniacs, because this is a portfolio that was up before I got on Animaniacs. And so my supervisor actually saw my Hilda piece and he was like, oh, I know, even though that's not the style of Animaniacs at all, he was like, oh, I know you can adapt. So I know you're going to be able to figure out this style. So it was a real confidence booster for him to see that for me. So
Yeah.
you don't want to give, the recruiters or, your bosses like any doubt that you can hit the style.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And in the industry, you're going to have to adapt to whatever brief, whatever style gets thrown at you. So the versatility is really important.
Yeah.
Contrary to what an illustrator does, right? Like an illustrator, you kind of have to have a style and be known for that style. Whereas in the industry,
Yeah.
right?
Unless you're
Animation is
gonna be an illustrator for like companies that already have an established style, yeah, people are gonna hire you for you. Versus an animation, you're kind of like you have to like be a chameleon in the background. Just like you can't see me, Everyone's backgrounds have to look the same. I've worked with like right now on the show I'm on, there's 4 or 5 of us, and we work on the same sequences sometimes, and it has to look like it's the same person making it.
yeah, for
Otherwise, you're
sure.
going to be like, huh, that's weird. Like, why was it like this here? And it's like the continuity is really important.
Yeah, the consistency for sure. And
Mhm.
so this image, was this also inspired off of a style or a
Oh,
show?
probably. This one was so long ago. It's hard to look at, honestly. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but his name is Max, like Ulishi, and he's an amazing artist, and he makes Procreate brushes. And so I bought his like acrylic or oil painting brushes, and I just wanted to make something really graphic that I'd never done before and just like really shape forward, which was like just a totally different style than I'd ever done before. I was much more into like almost photorealism when painting. So yeah, this was like pushing myself. I started getting into map crunch studies as another way to do like life studies without having to go outside because it was 2020. So I like would just go on map crunch, Google Maps, and I would go to places I liked and or randomize it, and then I would just paint them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's like traveling through Google
Mhm.
Maps and then
It's still,
finding.
yeah, still one of my favorite things to do. This one, I think I was also going graphic. I wanted to do mountains. Yeah. Uh, it got
And
kind of out of
so
hand though.
so when you were doing these, did you have a style reference next to you as well as as well as the reference image? Like how do you go about stylizing your images when you're doing this exercise?
I usually have more than one. Like I'll be like, oh, I like this from this person. I like these colors from this person. This one didn't really. I don't remember having too much of a like sometimes it's like, okay, I'm doing the trees, so I need to figure out a reference for handling trees. And then, oh, how about a grass reference? How about some cloud reference, right? So it's just kind of a mishmash, mix up of different styles, I would say.
Got it. So
Hmm.
would you say that if you had a personal style that it would be somewhat close to this?
No, I don't know what
No?
my personal style is anymore. I get too bored. I have to switch it up. I think that's why I was made for animation because that's just too boring for me to do the same thing over and over. I have like brushes that I am like really drawn to, the ones that I feel like the nicest painting with. But I just see something that someone else has done and I'm like, oh, now I want to do that. Oh, now I want to do that. And so I can't, it's like I can't sit still.
Well, that's the creative itch, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this, there are a lot of people who are trying to find their way and
Mhm.
trying to, even if they're doing it as a hobby, right? What can you do to move yourself forward? Or if you have a particular goal in mind, like to break into the industry, what are some of the things that you can do? So sharing your process, I think, is very, very helpful for people to to see like what you did and how you
Mhm.
found success. Um,
Yeah. Like I think on this one, I mean, you can see pretty much every painting in here is using different brushes
yeah,
and kind of a different color palette for the most part. So usually when I start a new drawing, it'd be like, okay, let's see how far I can do this drawing with just this brush. So sometimes you'd limit yourself. I think limiting yourself can be a good thing. It's like, okay, I only have like purple and yellow. That's my color scheme. And I'm using this specific brush. Let's kind of see what we can make within those constraints. Um, yeah, and basics, you can never do too many basics, value studies.
mhm.
If you ever get stuck or you feel like, your art's not going beyond what you want, sometimes it's best to take a step back and kind of go back to the basics and be like, what did I miss in my fundamentals? Like the building blocks to do what I want to do. So like maybe you want to make a really epic cityscape, but you just can't get the perspective right, or you can't get the color right, then just go back. You're not there yet. And that's okay. You're going to get there eventually. Just be patient.
Yeah. And I see in a lot of your studies, you've been studying a lot of landscapes, lots of perspective, and like lighting studies like this, just
Yeah,
drawing the
that's really
same
important.
theme.
That's really important for a portfolio. And that's what I was trying to do here, is doing the same location in different times of day. Because yeah, you're going to have to do that on a show for sure. Yeah. Oh gosh, this background. Guys, here's my first art tip. You can't put shadows inside of shadows. That's not how it works. That's what I'm talking about with the basics. I didn't understand how lighting worked here. This is not going to happen in real life. I saw that, I was like, no. This one's too. I love this painting. I love the colors, but the light source is not quite consistent. It still works, I think, and you can break the rules sometimes, and it's fine. Like I think here it works well enough. But
yeah, I didn't notice that the sun is coming from the right and the left at the same time.
I didn't either.
And
this one I made. This is after Animaniacs. I was a full professional at this point, and I still did that. So you're never perfect.
This is probably one of my favorite pieces of yours. So how long did this take you?
Oh, geez. I don't remember. This was in between jobs. So I was unemployed for like 3 months between Animaniacs and then my first brown bag job. And so this was in the style of Cuphead. I don't know if anyone's been able to guess that, but I was really obsessed with Cuphead backgrounds. And I wanted to do more interiors because as you've seen, I love landscapes. So this was like, okay, let's get crazy. This probably took a couple days. Yeah.
Okay. And so let's say an art director that you're working with would ask you to create a landscape like this or a interior like this. How long would you have? Like, how long would you get? Do you get a budget for that?
So I've not really in my career so far, and we can talk about like kind of my job more later, but I've never really been just given a blank assignment and been like, go make this. Usually I already either have the storyboard, the location established, like there's people called fun pack artists. And so that's what they do, is they go and create the locations. And so, yeah, they would probably be given a day to do roughs, and then they start cleaning it up, and they can probably clean it up in like a day or two and then have color keys. Like you have 8 hours a day to do this. And if you're only given like 1 or 2 assignments, it's doable. So I'm not actually quite sure. I don't want to say numbers on them because I don't know how much time they're fully given. I can talk about my Animaniac stuff later, but that's a bit different because I was working part-time on those. So it was just kind of like a couple hours at the end of every day. But I usually try to get it done as fast as possible. Like that's kind of the goal, is to be as fast as possible.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
And then these are just, so question, is this more of the map crunch stuff, or do you do some of these based on your own photos?
Both. Yeah, okay. These are both. A lot of my own photos. So this was plain April. It's kind of a mouthful to say, but it's a challenge in April where you paint a plein air painting every single day for, how many days are in April? 30.
30. I didn't even show all of it. There were too many pieces to actually put in the slideshow, so I cut this in half.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you had 30 days to do this, and so this was like before I got hired. This was in 2022. I did this, and I had just gotten a puppy with my family, and I was the main caretaker of my puppy, and so I was exhausted, and I was not making any art. And so I was like, okay, we're going to do plein air April. I'm going to dedicate at least an hour to 30 minutes minimum to finish a painting. And I'd never worked that fast. So it was like a real like boot camp for like most of these paintings. I look at them, I'm like, not great. They don't really hold up to my current standards. But at the time I was experimenting with brushes, with different programs, with different like scenes and locations, and just, really pushing myself. And it's kind of like, well, you got an hour to do it. And so whatever you end up with, you got to post. You got to it's out of your hands now. You get to move on. It's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were actually, I mean, I don't know if you did any of these on location, but if you did do them on location, the light changes. I mean,
Mhm.
the light changes every 15 minutes and sometimes more often. I remember doing plein air pieces where I started painting and it was sunny and then it started raining. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it can be very unpredictable, but this does definitely proves that, you know, you really, really worked hard and you um, did all of the things that you know may not be as fun like the boot camps, but
Hmm.
the amount of growth that happens afterwards is exponential.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh
so
yeah.
garbage cans.
Garbage can. So this is showing that you're never out of being a student. You're a forever student. So I've been taking art classes while I'm working like on the side for my whole career so far. And so this was one of the last classes I took, and it was a more intermediate advanced background painting with some amazing Los Angeles artists. And so one of our assignments was to take an object or scene and then just make up different lighting styles. So this is my attempt. So the first one is a diffuse lighting style. So you paint that and then you get crazy.
Yeah, I love the one where you can see shadows on it. That's
Mhm.
definitely hard to paint.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so question, if you were if this was an animation, right?
Mhm.
Would you be painting the moving shadows or would that be done by an animator?
So what would probably happen is no, you wouldn't paint the moving shadows. They would be done on a separate layer that then I would say comp would um, move them, figure out a way. They do magic over there that I don't understand. So it's a comp problem for sure.
Okay. So you wouldn't be asked to do a visual sample on a different layer which then they would follow, right?
Um, hmm. If like the shadows are like swaying, you would probably at least paint the reference to be like, this is what we want to look like. So on my current show, there were some things that have been glowing, and that's a comp thing to do is make them glow, but we still paint the glow so that they can see what it should look like.
Got it.
Mhm.
So then would you say that this would be something that would be really important to see in a portfolio, that you're able to make up lighting and that you understand how to portray the same item, room, you know, whatever
Yeah.
it is you're drawing in different ways?
Yes, that's very important. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
the basic understanding of color is so key in background painting. Yeah, they need to see that in pretty much all of your pieces in your portfolio, that you understand how light works, you understand how color works. Um, yeah, you can, you're versatile, different styles working together. Yeah,
This is a great exercise too. I
this was
mean,
so much fun. I want to do this again. This is another assignment from that same class, and so I took a photo reference that I simplified, and then I just started slapping colors on there, finding really fun references, playing around with the different color combos, ones I've never done before, see what happens, see how things feel.
yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, this definitely looks like fun. And it also looks like you took references of like color palettes that you like and you adapted them.
Yeah, like I tried to do, I think there's Tadahiro Usuegi, I can't remember his last name, is in there. He's one of my favorite illustrators. And then I can't remember some of the other ones. Some of them are from TV shows and other artists. And then I also tried to grab from live action. Wes Anderson has some really specific like colors and look about his movies. And so I wanted to see if you could capture that in like a 2D way. So yeah, that one
Mhm.
was a bit hard to grasp because there's definitely some sort of filter on everything, right? And so you just kind of gotta um, reverse engineer it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like a fun exercise and something that you would assign to your students if you were running a
It's a
workshop.
really fun exercise.
And
These ones are less fun, but still important.
so the art of simplification, and funny
Mhm.
enough, we were just talking about this in one of my classes, but can you tell us like what the goal of the exercise that you did here is and why it's
Yeah,
important?
I think the goal here is learning how to see what's important almost. So there's a lot of information in all the shots, and it's about making decisions and kind of following them through. So you can see on a couple, I made two versions because I was playing around with which decision is better for kind of the composition and for reading it. So you really want to be able to see what's happening in two colors. And so some things you're just gonna leave out, even if like I was like, oh well, it could be grouped into black, but maybe it should be white so that it fades away, you know?
Right.
So it's a really good exercise in decision making.
And it seems like you did a lot of these exercises and using more, more value range, because the first one is really just black and white, right? As simple as you can go, using shapes, and more so about designing a composition that's effective. Well, these ones, you're also kind of playing around with, what happens if the background is lighter than everything else, or like there's less contrast, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I'll be honest, there's names for each of these value styles, and I can't remember them. But I'm pretty sure the last one is high key. And then I think the first one might be low key. And then the middle one is kind of in the middle. So mid key. Let's go with that. But you can see it's not necessarily about like which values you're using. It's the amount of each value in the piece. So you're using like 80% kind of light gray, or like a kind of darker light gray, and then a little bit of this and a little bit of white. And so it's just about playing with value groupings.
Right. And proportions of values.
Proportions, yeah.
Instead of the 50-50, right?
Yeah.
Which is, were you told to kind of stay away from, if you were using 3 values, the 30-30-30 of each, or the 50-50 if you were using 2 values? Is that less aesthetic?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're using 50-50, it's kind of like, well, which one is, something has to be the most important.
Right.
Right. So if everything is given equal value, then you probably lose a bit of what's important.
Yes, exactly. So prioritizing, right?
Yeah.
Making back to better decision making.
I've done so many of these, you guys.
And more of these. I recognize the Sargent painting in here.
Oh yeah. And that one is a really good example of like those kind of girls probably could be pushed back. Like they're not the central focus, but it's them kind of talking to each other that's important. And so that's how the decision was made to like keep them this way. Yeah. The landscapes were really hard, like the mountains. How do you figure that one out? That one's, a little bit harder.
Yeah. So guys, that was just her first portfolio. Some of the things that, Kelsey worked on in between jobs. So now let's look at your professional portfolio.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And how to keep fresh, how to keep on top of things and get noticed.
Yeah. So this one was inspired by the Spider-Man movies. Jeez, what were they called? Yeah, just like a little more graphic, a little more funky, less perspective. and like figuring out lots of texture, yeah. This was kind of based on a picture but also based on other people's paintings that I really loved. And I was trying to do a night scene because I didn't really have many of those. And so yeah, this one was really fun. This one was from a workshop I did. So another class that I took after the fact. And this was all about combining styles. So taking multiple artists and figuring out how they would work together. I can't fully remember whose styles I combined, but it's mine now. So it's fun. This loosely Ghibli. I was just like, we're going to spend a week rendering the crap out of this background.
What I love about this is that it's so monochromatic and desaturated on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side it just warms up. It really gives you such a beautiful feeling of light, and all the colors are kind of coming to life, which is so like so when you created this piece, did you use a photo reference, or did you use so how did you make it up?
Lots of photos combined together and then thumbnailed. So this one was not from the class that I took, but it's sort of a spin-off almost, like based on something I drew in the class that I didn't make anything out of. I took an old sketch And then I kind of you just keep changing a sketch that's kind of based on multiple photos, and eventually you'll come up with something that doesn't exist, but still is grounded. And so that's kind of what this is. I think I had a couple different color references from Ghibli, specifically Howl's Moving Castle was kind of the main reference. You can probably see that in this piece. And then, yeah, figuring out how to make the sort of back be simple, but still kind of shine through and figure out how the light would work. And I think I did a lot of color study. So I did like color thumbnails on this one so that I wouldn't be guessing when I got to the rendering stage, because I knew that would be just like too hard to make up on the spot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So these ones, I'm going to show both of them.
Yeah, it's nice to toggle between them.
So for these, you got the layout by an artist named Devin L. Kurtz. Some of you might know them, but yes, then you were responsible for the painting.
Yeah, this was again from the background painting class I took. And so we spent like a couple weeks just like putting in the flats, figuring out different, I actually had a third that I was supposed to do that I never quite finished for this. So I got a lot of guidance from my instructors on how to make things glow and how to like make it pop. But yeah, it's a lot of, so I did the daytime one, or kind of the golden hour one first. And I pretty much painted there's a flat layer of just flat colors on the bottom. And then on top of that, I painted in the light sources and kind of the glow. And then when I went to the other one, I pretty much turned most of those light sources off, added some filter, blue multiply on top, and then just kind of repainted some areas.
Oh, interesting. So do you find yourself using a lot of filters for changing things like lighting?
Yeah. You can there's some pretty good filters out there. Gradient maps are pretty good. I'm pretty sure there's like a 3D kind of filter that I used on one show to turn everything into nighttime. So they can be pretty handy. They're also very easy to overdo. So you kind of have to tightrope walk to find like what works. Yeah. Especially with multiply. I actually, maybe a hot take, but when I paint shadows, I don't like using the multiply. I just paint them like with color. I don't rely on the multiply layer.
Yeah. Cool. And then when so that brings me to ask you a question. When you're collaborating with other people, let's say, do you ever have to work with other background artists where they have to access your file? And and like if you don't paint with multiply and they do, how does that work?
Oh, well, if it's on a show, I will. I'll just follow the show style rules and a lot of multiply because it's just easier, especially it's more graphic. So I'll use it if I'm looking for something graphic and simple and easy. Like if you have like a sweeping shadow across like multiple buildings, just throw on a multiply layer and then it'll hit, all the spots. But if I'm doing, like a map crunch study or, one of my own backgrounds, I find it really good practice to just paint it yourself. So you pick the right colors and you understand how light works and like where the warms are and where the cools are, and just kind of do that hard work yourself instead of relying on multiply.
Right.
So there is definitely a time and place. I don't never use it. I just, like here, there's no multiply layers here. It's just normal. And then you get to, do the color yourself.
Mm-hmm. These are gorgeous, Kelsey.
Thank you. Or more map crunch. And then also learning how to use texture to create like foliage, to create like to hint at things in the background to simplify, but it still reads. Like if you zoomed into the leaves on the tree kind of background, it's kind of a hot mess, but it still works because you got the colors right and the value right.
Stay zoomed out.
Yeah. It's fun to look at the texture sometimes, but it's kind of magic how that works.
Oh, definitely. I remember we talked about that with Sargent. Like when you look up at like really closely at his painting, it's a mess. But when you step away, it just looks so realistic that it's hard to tell that these are not photos.
I mean, yeah, and all the Impressionists, I am very attracted to Impressionist paintings. And I'm pretty sure they actually like learned how to do camouflage, like army camouflage from Impressionists, because you started learning how your eye actually reads color, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Okay, so guys, do a lot of map crunch. If you
No, go into the world for like, do map crunch if you kind of want to maybe go to Iceland from your bedroom, but go outside, touch the grass.
The benefit of going outside is it forces you to work quickly.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And like when I do these, I do work quickly. But if I started with these and just was like, oh, I have all the time in the world to noodle at this, like that's not what I set myself up to do. These are like a couple hours. Like I think I can kind of do a map crunch study in 3 hours, which is still a bit long if I'm really rendering it and want it to like look cleaner. But yeah,
So
yourself.
would you do one of those black and white studies for these, or what is your process for doing a fast painting?
If you're a beginner, I would do black and white. I don't do that anymore because black and white is very helpful. I have a hotkey that can switch my painting into black and white. So at any point in the painting, I can check my values. I think it's like Control Y. So keep that in mind. And so I do that all the time throughout a painting. Even with my professional paintings, I will be checking the values. But when I do these, I can kind of already see it. Like I kind of have done it so many times. I don't need to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question for you from Reimagined Skies. The trees and lens glare are so cool. Love the shadows too. Did you keep these loose with the strokes or zoomed in with little strokes?
Oh, this was so zoomed out. That's another tip. This was so zoomed out. All of these were, except maybe the blue building. I probably zoomed in a little too much on that one. But when I do map crunch studies, it's like this big on my screen, like I keep it really zoomed out for a really long time.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, if you were to do these traditionally, because I do a lot of plein air traditional, you can't physically zoom into a piece of paper, right? Unless you can get close to the piece of paper, but that's not going to help you see it better. So I always like to work like no bigger than a photo if you were to print it, maybe 5x7 or 6x8 or something like that, and use big brushes. So I don't know the size of the brushes you use, but I use like at least half-inch brushes or 1 centimeter, right, to work on a 5x7. Yeah, and that's one way of forcing myself to work faster.
Yeah, because I was a traditional painter first, when I do these, I kind of treat them like traditional paintings. I don't use that many layers. I sometimes, even if I use multiple layers and I get to a point where I'm not sure, where things are going, I'll just flatten the whole thing and then I'll start painting on top. It keeps it really loose. And so when I do these, I use a hard brush. I don't use any flow or opacity. I also don't like flow and opacity. Everything at 100%. Otherwise, it just gets messy so quick and muddy, right? So I use usually a flat brush, just a straight up, anyone can make it, a square or flat brush, and I just block things. And sometimes I'll just paint with the lasso tool for a while as well, and then slowly get into the details. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So start big. Don't zoom in. Use big brushes.
Use big brushes.
No opacity.
Full opacity, right? Is that?
Yeah. No, I said no opacity, but yeah, full opacity.
Full opacity. No flow, full flow. Everything's at 100%.
Got it.
Hard brush, yeah. It's hard, but it works.
So we're finally going to show some of your animation work, but you can see, just with all of the hard work that you do on your own, never stop learning, never stop improving, never stop taking classes to kind of keep your skills sharp. So I'm super excited to kind of showcase all of the stuff that you've worked on. Is it cool to like watch these shows and see those backgrounds?
I mean, like I kind of got a big show my first try. Like I haven't quite worked on a show as big as Animaniacs since then. I love the other shows I've done. But like if someone asked me like, oh, what have you worked on? It's like Animaniacs. And they're like, oh, what? So it's really fun. And it was such a great team. And I had a really, really good time on the show.
Cool. So tell us about how you got on the show. And I'm going to show some of the artwork, but like what was that like? And how did you stumble upon the opportunity?
Well, I had been applying for like I got the job in October 2021, and I had been applying solidly since March of that year for work. And it was also in sort of the COVID animation boom. So like a lot of people were putting a lot of money, and they genuinely, and I kind of miss these days, not the COVID, but the work where they had like more work than artists. And so they were pretty desperate for people. Tim Mouse at the time, like Tim Mouse is based in Vancouver, the studio that I worked at, and I was in Toronto. And so they were so desperate and like looking for people that they were willing to hire me freelance, someone who's never worked in the industry before and who genuinely didn't really know what she was doing when I started. And they gave me a chance. And yeah, it was so much fun.
And so when you were thrown into the production line,
Literally thrown.
how did you I mean, obviously, how did you feel? Like,
oh my gosh, yeah. You know, the hardest part was that it was all remote, and they were in the different they were across the country from me. It was noon when I started because that would have been 9 a.m. in Vancouver, and I hopped online, and I didn't have the permissions I needed to access the files. So I was like, oh my God, what do I do? So I sent out emails, and you got to be proactive with these things too, right? Like things aren't working, you got to show them that you're at your computer, you're here, you're working, because they don't know what you're doing. And then we had our first meeting, and they spoke in a language that was probably English, but I didn't know what they were talking about. They were throwing around all these animation words. And I had to like get my supervisor, who's such an awesome person, to have a one-on-one with me. And I pretty much said to him, like, please explain this job to me like I'm like 5 years old. Like, you need to start from scratch. And he was so patient. And sometimes you don't get, supervisors that have that kind of time and patience for you. But he was so nice and pretty much walked me through all of the, language and all the basics. And yeah, we were off from there. Answered I had many more questions for many more weeks after that. And he kept, answering them. And, you can't be afraid to, admit what you don't know, because they don't know what you know. So you have to sort of ask a lot of questions, be like, hey, how's this looking? Hey, is this, perspective working? What's going on? And then also be prepared to get a lot of red lines back. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes. There's going to be revisions. That's just normal.
So were you given existing backgrounds and told to match them? We're like three questions. One is, what does an assignment as a background artist look like? Like, what are the things that you get, and what are you expected to deliver?
Mm-hmm.
And do you get the working files from the previous artists so that you can study them and sort of emulate what they did?
Yeah, good question. So because I was at Titmouse, and this was a Warner Brothers show, pretty much all the pre-production work happened in Los Angeles. And so Titmouse is the like external kind of overseas production studio. And so we weren't the only studio working on the show, like animating the show. So all of the key backgrounds would be done already. So like pretty much all of the color, they call them color keys. So pretty much like a really wide shot, sometimes 3/4 view of interiors, explaining this is what the location looks like. These are the colors to use. And then we get assigned sequences from the storyboard that we're assigned to do the layout and paint for, which is unusual for most animated shows. Usually you're either layout or paint, but they had the workflow down by season 3 of layout and paint. So you download the storyboard, you download the relevant reference backgrounds, and then you pretty much just have to make a background for where the characters are and kind of be like, okay, this is the shot, this is the angle that they're at, this is like what I think's happening. And then there's some leeway with moving things around for composition and like tangents and stuff like that. And then you paint it and hope it gets approved. So yes, I do work with other people's files. Sorry. That's okay. That's also big, is sometimes, so they would send us backgrounds, like key backgrounds that would be used in a shot. And so we would pretty much have to throw in what is it called? It's the template, right? Mm-hmm. For animation to use, to be like, okay, here's the characters, here's the template. We would have to relayer them to match what animation needs. So layering's a big deal. And yeah, that sometimes, depending on how many artists worked on it before me, I have no idea. The files could be like over 500 layers.
Oh
and
my
it could
goodness.
take like hours to move one little thing around, right? So that happens. Yeah, a lot of people touch the same file.
Yeah. Wow. 500 layers.
Yeah, there are a couple like that, but they're epic. Like this one is a bigger one than I did, but this scene was done by a different artist, I remember, and it was like huge, and there was like a pan all across, right? And so they deal with those big shots, the big epic shots, and they did a really great job. It's a really beautiful backgrounds on this show.
Yeah. And it just, so how big in pixels would you say that something like this would be?
There is a limit. And I can't quite remember, but I think it's like 3,000 or 6,000.
Okay.
So we have a template, and the template shows kind of the maximum like field. It's called the field guide. That's what it's called. So you have the field guide, and there's also a minimum field guide. So nothing can be smaller. Nothing can go smaller than like the minimum field guide to be readable on television. And so I have gotten a background. It was like a really big zoom out. So it started really small on this house window and it zoomed out to show the entire street. And I ended up having to cut the background in half. So we turned it into 2 shots instead of just the big 1 shot. So it was actually like usable and didn't turn into like a PSB. So yeah, file sizes can be a headache sometimes.
Definitely. I can imagine how meant just like the sheer amount of stuff you work on and how much that takes up on your computer.
Yeah.
But so for something like this, for example, where there's text and there's images that are distorted, this is something that has been designed before, or did you design this completely from scratch?
So this one actually, this is a unique one that sometimes happened on the show where Warner Brothers had this layout already completed. So they had actually already drawn it. And I got to paint it with actually very little reference. So this one was one of my first times just straight up like painting, using my own skill instead of, just trying to match what another artist did. I think that I had to put in that Meatball Man 2 logo. You get some assets as well from them, like prop assets and logos and stuff. And so I think I might have put that in. But yeah, this was actually very few times that Warner Brothers, the artist there, had actually already completed the layout.
Got it. Okay, cool. So it sounds like you get a mishmash of
It's a big mishmash.
Yeah, of different things. All right, cool. So you also worked on this show.
Yeah, this was, I think it was like a full year after I wrapped on, not even a year, maybe it was like half a year since I wrapped on Animaniacs. And I got the email that they needed somebody to be the lead for these, like the mashup between Masterclass and Pinky and the Brain. And I had been recommended based on my work on Animaniacs. And I was working full-time at Brown Bag. And then I did this on the side, which I don't recommend. But like when you're an artist, unfortunately, work comes in waves and then nothing. So you kind of got to take what you can.
Yeah, and jump on the stuff that appeals to you, right?
Yeah.
I'm being realistic. I'm sure there have been things that are less appealing in that you've been assigned, versus opportunities like this where you get to really, broaden your scope of skills and also like work on a really cool show.
Yeah, this was the first time I designed on a show. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. It's really scary. And I'm doing this part-time and I'm alone and there's no art director. It's a very small team. It was like me and the director. And then I did end up getting one of my other coworkers to help me out with backgrounds because it turned out to be a little more expensive of a job than kind of initially thought. So she helped me out a lot. And then, yeah, it was really fun though.
So can you explain to me what design would be? Is it different than what a background artist would do?
Yeah, so background artist is sort of like the umbrella term for anyone who does anything related to the backgrounds. But the specific terms would be you have your designer, which takes the storyboard and the concept, the script, and designs the backgrounds from scratch, right? They come up with everything. And then there's background painters who will paint the lined drawing, the black and white drawing from scratch. And then you have layout artists. Layout artists take an established design and like the storyboard and then redraw that design in different angles to match the storyboard.
Oh, wow.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So have you had an opportunity to do all of those things?
Yes, I did all of them.
Wow. Okay. So which one do you enjoy the most?
Painting.
So painting from
Painting's the
a
best.
line drawing.
Yeah.
Painting from a line drawing. Okay. Okay. So in this case, you had to design the scene and you had to line it and you had to paint it.
Yeah, on this show, because I designed the background, so this was the finished background. So originally there was a design, and I have the concept art for it later in the slideshow, so we'll get back to that. And so yeah, there's a different lighting styles I needed for this. If you watch it on YouTube, you'll see what happens, like how the lights turn on and off, and it's very cool what Conf does with things. But yeah, I guess this is an example of paint having to provide alternative versions of a lighting scene and using a lot of different layers and making sure. This is why clean layers are really important, right? And I forget your other question.
Oh, I guess my question was, I'm just intrigued at the process and how much goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So you designed it, you painted it, and then
yeah, and then I had to redraw it in all these different angles.
All these different.
So that would be more a layout job. This is now layout, is taking my established like key background and redrawing it from the angles that were shown in the storyboard.
And so that sounds really hard to do. So what are some of the because we have a lot of students who want to draw something at different angles out of their head and can't quite figure out how to do it. What helped you to figure out how to do this?
Oh, I did it so many times. I think it's just quantity. Like I had never really done it that much before I got on Animaniacs, and then you're thrown into the pits of the production wheel and you're given a deadline and you just have to do it.
Right.
So I don't really fully know. I think you just have to have a really solid understanding of perspective and what things, like you have to also have a pretty good imagination to think, what would this chair look like from the side? What would this look like from the side? And doing a lot of like sketches to kind of figure out what feels best, right? Like you're not going to go straight in with a clean line. You kind of got to play around with a couple perspectives, be like, what do you think about this? Turning on your kind of science brain to think like, okay, the camera's turned like 25 degrees here and we're zoomed in. What would I see?
Right.
And then you just got to do a lot. It's a lot of thinking. My brain always hurts when I have to do layouts like that.
So I find that, for example, I designed a sword one time and I had to draw it in different directions, and I had a lot of trouble doing it. Today you could just 3D sculpt it and then move it around and draw it. Yeah. But I had to actually sculpt this dragon that was like curving around. I had to sculpt it and then draw it because I had trouble visualizing it. So did you ever have to make like a floor plan or some kind of like build it with Legos and then turn it to actually see
That's
how
really
it would
smart.
work?
No, I've never done that. Sometimes floor plans are given to us as a part of the like layout package, the kind of keys package. So that's always very helpful. Oh, it's just like brute force. I genuinely feel like you just have to brute force, think about it. And, a big thing that I would do is, especially you can look at these backgrounds and you can look at all the different angles. And so I would block everything out first. So I'd be like, okay, the chair is not a chair anymore. It's a square. It's a rectangle. It's a cube,
space.
Right? So a lot of that, putting the characters in helps a lot so you can see where they're standing. In the space, and then you can kind of have the alternative, like finished background as a reference and be like, okay, they're standing here. How far back is the chair to their feet? How far, back is this to that? and it's never like going to be 100% correct. Like you're going to move things around for tangents, and also there's a lot of different camera like aspect ratios, like angles, right? Like lens zooms. So sometimes when you do a close up, you can kind of push things back a little bit because you can kind of pretend you're using a real camera. So there's a lot of like camera trickery that you can kind of fake when you do layouts, which is a whole other kind of can of worms.
Okay.
It's hard. It's pretty much the answer is it's hard, and you just have to do it a lot.
I guess when you're given a deadline and it's something you're paid for, right? Then you just figure it out.
Yeah.
So Looney Tunes, this is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a chance to work on backgrounds that are really, really stylized.
Yes, I believe I don't know if there's any big Looney Tunes fans, but I believe the artist is Maurice Noble. That's his name.
Sounds familiar.
Yes, he is the king of Looney Tunes backgrounds and pretty much like invented this style. And so that's pretty much I was given that name, and it's like, do that digitally. So, and then again, this was right after the Animaniacs shorts. I was working on it part-time again, and I was the only artist on it this time. So all the backgrounds are all done by me, which was
wow.
It was very fun. And I got to work with some people at Cartoon Network on some color concepts, and then they got to look at my work, which was very exciting. Yeah, so it's a good opportunity.
So how long would you be given to do something like this? Or I guess how long would something like this take you from beginning to end?
Oh, this one was really simple though. Like this one was really simple. So I think I think the process of these was I would do about 3 or 4 sketches because there was 4 shorts in total, I think. The Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, Wizard of Oz, and the Batman superhero ones. And so I'd pretty much do like 3 or 4 concepts for each one. And then I would send them to the director, and then he would either pick one or be like, this one, but do this. And then I would say, okay. And then I would do it clean, and then he would see it, and then he might have a couple notes. And then I would send about 3 or 4 color keys, get notes. That was actually the hardest process on these, was the people at Cartoon Network had some different opinions for color. And so they like pushed the current colors that we ended up with a lot, which ended up being very helpful. They were artists working as well. So sometimes you get clients who aren't artists, and so you have to kind of convince them your way is the right way. But no, they had some really great color eyes. They had a great eye for color. And then you paint them. Yeah. So a couple of weeks, I think and then I had to do all the cut-ins, which took the longest. But if I was working full-time on these, I probably would get these backgrounds done in like max 3 days, 2 days. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say these backgrounds, do you mean like all of the ones that we saw? So
no, I would probably do like the roughs, all the roughs in a day, and maybe some cleans, because the roughs don't take very long.
Right.
And then I'd probably clean them all up in another day, and then I could probably paint them in another day or 2.
Got it. So there's a whole process of getting it approved, doing roughs, doing concepts, and then finishing them once they're approved. Oh, I see.
And sometimes like that takes the longest, is I'll be able to paint fast, but if they have, disputes on like what they want, then you have to go back. And so it could take a bit longer. Usually that time, is kind of built into the schedule.
Yeah. Got it. All right. So this is a really cool show.
Yeah, open season.
Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the artwork that you made here.
So I was actually on layout and paint on this one, different times. So I started on paint. I didn't work on the full show. I think I jumped in the end of August to help them finish like the last few episodes. So I was only on it from September to December. And I kind of would jump around from layout to paint while they finished up. But it was a really similar kind of process to Animaniacs in terms of painting, not layout. Layout, that was hard to jump into, but definitely big growth as well.
So then you didn't have to do the different angles, but you did you do the design as well?
No,
no, just paint.
These ones were just paint. Yeah, I don't think I actually put my layout. I need to go in and grab them. But some of the layouts, there's something called reuse or repurposing. And so sometimes, you'll have a big landscape and you can grab certain elements for other backgrounds. There's like, oh, use the right half of this, put the left half of that. Oh, you can reuse this table. And so you just grab old assets and throw them in and then kind of draw like around that. So that's a lot of what the layout was.
Right.
So
That
it's not
makes
the
sense.
most attractive for like a portfolio, but that's how you work fast.
Right. All right. Cool. And then something stylistically so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one was really fun. This one was one of the first keys I got to paint. And I think the art director's note was that she wanted the stream to be blue, but also look shallow, but not muddy. Right. So that's the kind of notes you get sometimes. It's like, okay, we want the stream to be shallow, but not muddy. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's beautifully painted. So did you have to find your own references for this, or did the art director give you some samples to help you develop the visuals?
No, I found them on my own. Art directors are so busy. They don't have time for that.
Got it. Okay.
They're so busy. Yeah, she was a great art director on this show. She's awesome and a great supervisor. This is a really, really fun one. Hopefully, get the season 2.
Yeah. So, did you do all the backgrounds for this show, or did you work in a team of artists?
Oh, it was a team. It was a small team, actually. I was only on this show for about 3 months, so not too long. I wish I could have stayed longer. I think I went to open season after this. So sometimes you do jump in and out very quickly to different shows, just like where they need you. So that's like where you have to be really fast to adapt, because before I got there, the team had been working for like probably a year on backgrounds.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then I jump in and I've just got to go with the flow, like keep up.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you had the style already established. You just had to match the style?
Yeah.
Okay. But you had to paint that stream that was blue but not muddy. That was the one thing.
That was like a month in.
Okay.
She believed in me. I appreciated that.
So versatility.
Uh-huh.
So interesting to see all of these different styles that you're able to adapt. Would you say that versatility is one of those skills that you never thought you needed in animation?
I think that versatility has been something that I've naturally kind of had, if that makes sense. Like, I just think I've never been, maybe I'm fickle, like I can't make decisions. I can't make hard decisions. I can't even put stickers on things because I just like don't like the commitment. So it's kind of the same with like my backgrounds. I just see something I like and I want to do it. And then I see something else I like and I want to do it. So even when I was doing children's art and kind of my own personal process, I just recognized I was so early in my journey. I wanted to try everything. And now still kind of getting into my journey, but still at the beginning of it, I still want to try it. Like, I'm not ready to settle into a style.
And I think that's something that's really important to know about yourself, right? Because some people have a style that they cannot even get away from. It's just something.
And that's something I've never understood fully, because for me, I get bored easily too.
Me too.
And sometimes I don't know how to recreate something I've done. So I just move on.
Yeah, because I remember when I was in art school, my department chair reviewed my portfolio at the end and said, "Wow, you like doing a whole lot of different things." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "So, what should I do? I can't commit to anything. I want to try so many different things, and I get so bored of creating the same thing over and over again." And so she said, "Well, I think you should be an art director." So that was that. And I was like, what's an art director? Mm-hmm. So maybe we're going to get into the whole animation pipeline. And I think it would be really valuable for people who are, aspiring creators, aspiring animators, background artists, to really understand how it all works together, what these different roles mean. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna jump into that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is some behind the scenes
Oh
stuff.
yeah, these are behind the scenes. So this is what these are my good roughs. These are the ones I showed the director. I have roughs that nobody sees except me.
Okay.
Okay, so this is not like straight out of my hand first thought. This
Okay.
is after the scribbles. So just, feel like I should say that.
Got it. Okay. So then these are, so can you tell me a little bit about, so what, so I see the template and then I see what you've done these line drawings. So then they would approve these line drawings and then you would move on to the paint stage.
No, this is rough, so I still need
Oh,
to
these are
clean it.
roughs.
Honestly, though, with Animaniacs, because of the paint style, this probably would be good enough for a clean. Actually, I think I have more roughs than this because I was playing around with some of the objects. Like I think I had a globe, and I think I had, some different placements of things. I think the posters might have been different. So I probably should have dug a little bit deeper for some more roughs, but this is kind of after some things were solidified, like we were playing around with what's in the bottom left corner. And so the first one was Pinky and the Brain's cage, which has been featured. I've drawn and painted that many a times. But then the director wanted a more behind the scenes look. Like they kind of had a makeshift, mouse little setup, camera live stream setup. And so then I played around with like, okay, well, there's a pencil, and this one, it changed in the final. So we'll see the one that we went with. I was also playing around with like what's holding up the phone, and I chose a little thimble with some matchsticks. And so now you can kind of see the pencils, propping up the behind the scenes. I don't know. I looked up a bunch of reference pictures. I don't really know what these are. And I just threw a lot of like wires in, and the mic is on a ruler and matchsticks with the boxes open so you can kind of see where they got them from. And then there's like a reflector by the light bulbs, and my director wanted that in there. And then the kind of beakers had been featured in previous episodes, so I kind of repurposed those.
Right. Wow, that's a lot of thinking and detail, and
think about how the characters use the space, like what makes sense for them to bring to the scene.
Right.
It's like we look at it like, okay, yeah, I drew that background, but for people watching the show, it's like, no, this is just their house.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to feel natural to the mice.
Yeah, that must have been so much fun to kind of think about. How would a mouse set up a studio in a makeshift place?
A genius mouse too, right? Like he's a smart guy.
Yeah, you go really deep in the storytelling, which is really pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to talk about what it takes to break into the animation industry. And by now, you probably know that you don't need to just animate to work in the animation industry. There's a lot of different, different roles and lots of teamwork that's required. But Kelsey, what would you say what are some of the, what would you say is the most important skill when it comes to working in the animation industry?
Ooh, I always think getting a job is a combination of luck and skill, right? And so I got lucky the first time with how desperate they were for artists, but then I had the skill for them to pick me, right? So, skill's really important. That's what's going to kind of be what they see, but they also have to find you somehow. And I don't really know how that works all the time. Like when I got onto my current show, I was unemployed for like quite a while before I got on my current show. And it kind of has to probably do with the fact that I knew the producer from a previous show. And then my portfolio got into the right hands. I don't really know what happens behind the curtains. All I know is that I have to show that they can't have any doubts that I can do the job. Right? It's like They look at my portfolio and they're like, we know that she will consistently deliver, meet deadlines, be a nice person to collaborate with, and just be a team player, take notes well, get the job done.
Yeah. Okay, I know we have some truth bombs that we're going to share, and then we're going to get into Q&A, but I just thought it was really fun to kind of see how far you've come.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, from your first, I think this is like your first oil painting.
We did that oil rub of that pug, like,
okay. Your second
that was
oil
the first
painting.
one. This is my first real oil painting. This is a plein air. This is from outside the studio window in Markham. Mm-hmm.
I remember
Yeah.
saying, tone the canvas a fun color.
Yeah.
and
I still do that when I paint on digitally. Every time there's usually a pink or yellow or orange underpainting, which sometimes you can see peek through.
Love it.
Yeah,
and I still remember this day because it was outside the studio, and then look at some of the stuff that you're doing now. But yeah, out of everything that you've kind of said, it takes a lot of perseverance, right? Because there were times where you were not employed, and there were times where you probably questioned, like, would I be doing this? Like, were there times where you thought that you would give up or try something else, or weren't exactly sure that this is what you wanted to do?
I think once I decided, that was it. I mean, being unemployed and like dealing with the turbulence, it kind of just comes with the territory. And there's like times even now, my current contract's going to end in a couple months, and it's like, what am I going to do? I don't know what the work's going to be like after this. But all I know is that I don't really want to do anything else. And so that's not really an option. It's like, even kind of being miserable at this job is better than, having a job somewhere else. So it's maybe more stable. So I'll figure it out. That's kind of like, I'll figure it out. This is what I want. This is what I've chosen. Maybe there'll come a time where something else falls into my lap. I know people who have moved on to art adjacent careers and, with a bit more stability, and they're very happy there. I don't see that at the moment in my future. I'm thinking about pivoting back to children's books, maybe try to learn some more comics, maybe get more into traditional art and selling traditional art. But yeah, no, this is what I've chosen. And that's the thing, is it's a turbulent industry, but if it's all that you want to do, you just kind of got to go for it 100%.
Yeah. And that comes down to the passion for this is what I want to do, knowing that, and then the perseverance to keep going even when it's turbulent.
Yeah. And you have to kind of pace yourself, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen fast. Right. So, if you're at a point where you're not ready to get hired, but you're kind of desperate to get hired like that, and you're just pushing yourself, that's what's going to cause you to burn out and just fall out of love with it. You have to really pace yourself and just kind of trust the process.
Okay, cool. And then also during those breaks, lots of perspective practice, right?
Personal art. You get to sometimes it's nice because I don't right now I'm working 9 to 5. When I get home, I just don't really have it in me to do personal work. And that's what happens to a lot of people. And that's fine. I'm really happy with how I've decided to manage my personal time. Because I'm really proud of the work that I'm doing on this show. So I've just decided for myself and kind of for my body and just health and in general to not really make drawing on my own a priority. Right. So when I take breaks from work, that's kind of my, what is it? The anime hero, the anime, go get them, I'm gonna work really hard.
Yeah, but so in your downtime, then you just embrace that, now you have some time for yourself, you can draw for yourself, and figure it out, right? Keep going, keep persevering.
And have hobbies outside of art. That's really important.
Yeah.
Have other hobbies. Don't make this your life, fully. Be a full-fledged person. That's a big piece of advice.
Good to know. Okay, so we're going to do some rapid fire truth bombs. These are some things that I know we talked about this before, but these are some skills that you didn't think that you would need in the animation industry. So if you are trying to break into the animation industry, it's good time to pay attention because these are some of the skills
that you will need. Okay, so the first one, I'll let you speak to these.
Okay.
Kelsey.
Digital tidying. Oh, yes. Organizing layers, folders, files, future you will thank you. So will collaborators. Yeah, this kind of comes with the territory of like working animation. There's a really specific filing system that you have to follow. I say really specific. I mostly mean certain objects have to be broken out a certain way. If you're just doing personal work, you don't have to worry about this, but you do need to be aware of something called overlays and underlays. OLUL, that's like the shorthand for it. Like, for example, if a character is walking behind something, that object needs to be layered in front of everything, right? So the character can pass through it. That was really hard for me to understand when I started. It took me a long time. So you can learn a lot of this stuff on the job. You don't have to be stressed out about like perfecting it beforehand. Just something to be aware of. You know, your file will go through lots of people. Make sure that they can touch it and handle it without their computer breaking or pulling their hair out. You know, that's ideal.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Speed running, efficiency, hotkeys, knowing when good enough is actually great enough. Yeah. So actually, I was talking to my supervisor about this the other day. Something really important to have as a skill before you get hired is being able to work in a digital program. If you're working in animation, it's going to be digital. So you don't need to be perfect at Photoshop, but you have to have a pretty streamlined process. So I've like learned on the job as well. You know, you talk to the people around you, they give you advice on like how they paint quickly, you know. So I've learned the pen tool through my work. And like the lasso tool is really important to work quickly. Setting up your hotkeys for the way that you're going to work efficiently. I recently learned how to create actions, which are very helpful. And I've pretty much automized a decent amount of my painting. Like I'm just pressing as few buttons as possible because saving those 5 seconds over so much time, like hundreds of times of saving like 5 seconds, it adds up. And you want all of those, like all that time that you can get.
So would you say that learning this, you just learned on the job, or do you think that people have to learn these before they start?
Both. You don't need to be like a know-it-all about Photoshop. You don't need to feel like you know every single thing about Photoshop. Nobody does. It is kind of an enigma that contains multitudes. But you need to have an established, pretty consistently fast workflow on your own. So whether that's, you know, you're quick with the lasso tool and you know how to fill objects quickly, you know how to use the magic wand quickly or the pen tool quickly, you've got your hotkeys, you don't need to go to the tab and click eraser, you got the E button, you know, that kind of stuff. You can quickly, you know, make your brush bigger and smaller. That's really important. Just that kind of stuff, just to have it kind of establish a workflow. The main thing you don't want is to be unfamiliar with the program at all before starting, and then you're kind of just like learning from scratch, like from nothing. Right. As long as you have a bit of experience, then you'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. +1 to human. Being good at collaboration, communication, and not growling at feedback. This is it's a team job. I have 4 other painters on my team. We're all doing the exact same job. We have team meetings. I submit my work to the supervisor. She will give me not critiques, but she'll kind of give me notes. I have to fix it and re-upload it. And that's just, you can't take it personally. If you take it personally, you're not going to make it very far because you're just going to be sad, you know, because it's going to happen all the time. And a lot of the time it's not even speaking about your own skill. It's just not what the show needs. So, you know, maybe you just picked a different color for a door and they just had a different opinion on what the door should be. But it's not that your door was bad. You just have to go with their door because they're in charge, you know? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you will mess up and you will get a note that's like, you forgot to do this. And you just got to be like, whoops, and just fix it, you know? Don't try to like push your own agenda. Be a nice person. And yeah, just even getting, I think this might be a different slide, but getting the, getting things approved is a compliment to you.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
You might not get told, oh, this is such an amazing thing. Sometimes you will, and I have, and it feels really good. But usually just it being approved without notes for me is like, oh yeah, okay, I did a good job.
Right.
Right.
Okay, chameleon mode, yeah. Versatility, adaptability, switching styles, tools, pipelines on the dime. And we talked a lot about this already, I think. We
Yeah, I
just,
think we did. We covered it
yeah,
in your artwork.
I think we covered that. Your style will be borrowed, adapted, and even absorbed into the studio's house style. So this one, I haven't had this personal experience with like my own style because I think we've said I don't have a style. Everything can become your style, but this kind of goes with the last slide where I think it's almost more like you're gonna have to draw stuff that you don't necessarily like personally, and take someone else's style. Like you might not even like the style you're painting in at all, but you just kind of gotta do it because you're getting paid to do it.
Yes. Okay. Okay. That's interesting because then you can't really be precious with your work, right?
Oh, no. I don't feel any sort of strong. I mean, I feel strongly connected because I'm proud of like what the team is doing. And there's certain backgrounds that I'm more proud of than others. But most of the time you're doing like 2 to 5 plus backgrounds like a day. You don't really feel for any, like you can't really have specific emotions or anything.
Right. And I think a lot of beginners, especially when you make something that you're super proud of, you get emotionally attached to it, and actually that'll work against you in the industry.
Yeah, I remember doing a portfolio review before I got hired. And it was like a live stream portfolio review, and there was this piece I was really proud of, and I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be great. And they looked at it and were like, this could be better, like, this is a really basic composition, the color is good, but it's really basic. And I was like, oh crap. Okay, yeah, they're right. Of course they're right. They're professionals. They're like artists at DreamWorks. Oh, nobody. Like, they know what they're talking about. So, you might be really fond of a piece of work, and I think that's important. Like, I think you should be. But then you also have to realize you're going to outgrow it. That's the thing. Like, you're going to see the faults in it eventually. Yeah. So you can't hold on to it too tightly, I think. You can have the sentiment, but just don't let it overwhelm you and not let you see feedback.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a hard lesson to learn, but once you learn, it's like, okay.
It takes practice to learn it. Okay. I've had a lot of practice in critiques, which we'll talk about later.
Okay.
But it's a skill. It's definitely a skill. Revision Olympics. Your work will be edited, revised. Frankenstein, that's normal. Yeah. It goes to a lot of people. It goes to the supervisor. It goes to the art director. Sometimes it goes all the way to like animation, and then it has to come back because something's not right, that they didn't discover until later. So you let it go, and then you don't think about it again.
Okay.
Oh yes, that NDA life. Working in a studio often means your art will never see the light of day. Be cool with that. Yeah, this kind of sucks that sometimes, shows get made that just never air. That's only happened to me once, which I'm very grateful for. It's still upsetting that, no one will see this beautiful show I worked on. And I can't talk about the show I'm currently working on. But yeah, it's secret. Such is life. Such is animation. So
you're a secret agent. And
you gotta sign a lot of paper.
Yes.
Approval equals compliments. Yeah, okay. Validation studio is a green check mark, not a standing ovation. Yeah, they hire you to do a job. Like, can you imagine working in an office and you do something right? Everyone's like, "Yeah, good job." It's like you're all adults, and you're hired because you're good enough to do the job. Yeah, you're not gonna. Sometimes if you're on a good team, you'll get a compliment. You'll say, "Hey, everyone's really complimenting the backgrounds. This is happening right now, and we're all very excited when we hear it." But you just kind of gotta put your head down and just do your job.
And not expect a gold star.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or a pat on the back. Because what is a sign that you're doing your job well is progress. The show airs.
Yeah. And this is like, I've struggled with this because I do have a level of self-worth tied to my work. And I think that's normal. You have pride, right? We're all human. We want to do a good job. I remember when I was on a show before, it was a tough job I had just jumped into this really, really fast moving ship that also kind of was, you know, maybe had a hole or two in it. And it's just kind of, it was a difficult job. And I was like doing a new position, and I was just getting all this feedback, and I had to redo stuff from scratch because I just didn't get things right. And, you know, I would get things approved as well, but all I saw were the revisions. And it did take a toll on me, and I had to kind of take a step back and be like, well, I'm not fired. And if I was fired, then I would be like, okay, you're doing a bad job, but they're not firing me. They're still giving me work. So let's like take a step back, remove myself from the equation, and just like do, you know, learn as much as I can. Yeah, it's hard. It can be hard sometimes. Ego detox. Critique does not equal personal attack. Growth comes from separating the two. Yeah, critiques are really important for artists. When I was at UBC, I actually learned how to give and take a critique professionally, kind of like with it was like steps, you know, and it was how to really give a critique properly for fine art specifically. But critique is critique across the board. No matter if you're getting critiqued on like a photography project or a painting, it still feels the same. So when I was at UBC, I kind of immediately learned how to do it respectfully. And, you know, you're getting critiqued by people you really respect and admire. And so you want to listen to what they have to say, and you have to kind of take down your walls of, no, I'm right. No, this is good. Like, no, don't tell me it's not good, you know, of like fighting. You have to take down the walls, accept it, throw away what you don't think is valid, because sometimes you'll get non-valid critiques, and then take it and make something better next time. One time I had a photography teacher. It's like I was taking a higher level photography class at UBC, and I didn't really understand the assignment. It was some fine artsy thing about like changing your environment or something. And I was like, what is this guy? What does he want? I don't know. And so I made what I thought followed the guidelines. And I think he spent like 5 or 10 minutes just being like, this is what not to do. And I was like, oh no. So then I figured out what he wanted though, right? Like I listened, I was like, okay, yeah, I didn't do it right. That wasn't the, luckily I'm not really precious about photography. It's not my career. And then by the end, I was able to figure out what he wanted and, you know, make better projects. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that if you want to work in any team, right, having an ego is only going to get in the way.
Yeah.
But it's natural. It's part of being human, right?
Yeah.
We want validation. We want to be right, but sometimes it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm. And I knew people in my like illustration program who had a really hard time with critique, and you could kind of see by the end of the program who struggled with critique and who accepted it in how much they grew. Yeah. So it's really important. Like it's a really important skill, and it comes with time. Like you might not, it's uncomfortable, but it's sort of like if you do it enough times, the feeling will become familiar and it will be less scary.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Unexpected side quest. Yes, sometimes it's even baking cookies. This is because I bake for the office a lot. And this is about having hobbies outside of art. It's really important as a person, you know, besides just like injury, like art injury and burnout, it just like uses your brain in a different way. Like, for example, my hobbies, I took a sewing class a couple months ago. I bake and cook a lot more now. I've started getting into baking and cooking, recipes, all that stuff. And I take Japanese. So that's my kind of alternative hobby that really tests my brain power. And hopefully will help me as I age, you know? So language is important, I think. So yeah, I've been learning Japanese for like a couple of years. So that's, yeah, it's important.
For sure.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I love this. This is like a quote that I got, or an idea I got from my coworker, who I probably got it from somebody else. And this applies to any job and sort of anything in life, I think, is, you know, there's 3 kind of skills. There's being like personable, so like good communication, you're fun to be around, you're kind of like the personality hire maybe of your office. There's efficiency, so that's kind of how fast you work. And then there's skill, which is like how good you actually are at the job. And so to get hired, you kind of have to have a level of all 3. Like you can't not have the skills. It's kind of a given. You have to have be baseline good enough, but you only really need 2 to kind of get your foot in the door. So you can be a really nice, personable, get great at getting feedback, you know, great at being on a team, and you're really fast and you can produce work like no one's business. But maybe there's more, things get sent back to you a little bit more, but you're so fast, so you'll get it done, right?
Right.
Or you can be really good at your job, like so stupid good and so stupid fast that like no one can say anything about your personality because you're just so good at what you do that you're going to keep getting hired. And then the final one, you're really, really good and you're a really good person, like you're a great person on the team, but it just takes you a little bit longer. But everybody knows that this person will, get it done, and it'll be really good when they do. So that's kind of a nice thing to think about.
And I think this is relevant to all jobs, especially, because I do a lot of hiring, and definitely if somebody is really aligned with your brand, right? They get you, right? That's like the personable skills. Like they're really aligned. They're really fun to work with. You look forward to talking to them. So absolutely. And then I think with skills and efficiency, both of those can be learned. Yeah. But I think for me personally, if I don't enjoy who I'm working with, even if they're really good and even if they're super efficient, I don't know. Maybe being personable can be learned, but in my opinion, it's a little.
I have luckily never worked with someone who is missing that, part of the Venn diagram.
Right.
And honestly, in animation, because it's so tough these days, you kind of have to be all three.
Yeah.
So it's getting tougher and tougher. And so slowly it's going to kind of be smaller and smaller. You have to be really good at all of them because there's less jobs.
Yeah, and there's like a ton of workshops where you can improve your skills, right? There's lots of hacks and like constant tools where you can get more efficient. But the personable part is the fit, right? That's like that is something that is not as easily trainable. So I think a good tip for everybody that's like listening to this is the personable skills is really essential and maybe something that we don't think about enough.
You're working in an office at the end of the day, right? Even if it's from home, you still, you have an office job essentially. So you're not like some unicorn artist just doing whatever you want. You have to, work on a team, be nice to talk to, be fun in meetings, maybe bring cookies.
And that makes it more fun too, right? That makes the job more enjoyable, working with great people.
Yeah.
Never mind just great artists, but great people.
And it's a really small industry. So you'll stay connected with people even after you finish the job. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you have to, try to make good impressions and be someone people want to keep hanging out with.
For sure. Okay. So, we talked about the animation production line, but this is a slide that kind of shows where you come in. Mm-hmm. And my question for you is like, whenever people think about working in animation, it's either I want to be a concept artist, or I want to draw characters all day, or I'm going to like physically animate. I think people do think, oh yeah, there are background artists too. But what are some of the other jobs within animation that you never thought existed or you never really like thought about until you started working there?
A lot of production roles. So these are the non-artistic roles. And a lot of the times sometimes people get into who want to be in the artistic world, but they're not quite ready and they'll kind of get into production, learn about how things work, how, the cake gets made. So there's producers, which are like top of the sort of pyramid. There's production coordinators, and I think there's another production job. And like there's a producer that will kind of work with a few teams. So there's usually multiple producers on a show, and they'll just make sure things are working right. The timeline is being followed. We're on schedule, making adjustments, pivoting, budget stuff, very much Excel spreadsheet sort of job. There's also riggers depending on what kind of animation that you're doing. So we do a lot of rigged shows at Brown Bag. A lot of, I think it's like, I don't know that much about the animation side, but it's the characters, you kind of create joints for them and they move instead of being hand drawn, like Toon Boom kind of stuff. Right. And let's see, scene setup artists. So I kind of didn't know that scene setup was part of the pipeline until I got into it. And scene setup are directly after background artists. So they'll take our backgrounds and then they'll take the character model and they'll put the character model in the background in where the storyboard artist has it. And that'll make sure in every single shot, they'll put in just a still image and they'll edit that together into like a test to see how it's going to look, if it matches with the backgrounds, if everything looks good. And then it'll go to animation. So then the animators know where the character is in the scene. So that's like a whole job that I didn't know existed. There's comp artists, VFX artists, prop artists. There's probably there's also like the voice acting in here somewhere, you know.
Right.
Someone has to edit so there's something called the Leica that's also called the animatic. Depending on the studio, it's the same thing. So someone has to edit that. Sometimes they try to get the storyboard artist to edit that, but you shouldn't. That's a separate job. Don't let them. I think that's a separate job. It's a lot of work to edit that together, put in the music, all that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of jobs.
Right. Okay. So 3 tips that you would, piece of advice, because a lot of people watching this are fascinated by the animation industry, but don't really know too much about it. So what are some of the things that you would have said to yourself? Pieces of advice.
Yeah, well, I think the alchemist part, like you get what you put in, that's related to sort of the art school side of things. So I didn't take the sort of traditional, I know I went to art school, but I didn't do the traditional animation journey of you get into Sheridan and you do your 4-year Sheridan and then that'll, give you a job. That's not how it works, especially that's never how it worked, but especially these days, it's not how it works. Some people think, oh, well, if I get into an art school and I just pass, I'll get a diploma, I'll get a degree, and then I'll get hired. But unfortunately, with art, it's more about the portfolio. So you have to just work really hard when you're there, no matter what school you're at. Even if you don't get into Sheridan, you get into a school you think is less prestigious. If you put in the effort there and you really work hard, you can still make it. It's not over. Right. If that makes sense. It takes commitment. Yeah, you just kind of have to decide to do it and then just keep deciding every day to continue doing it. I know a lot of people in my program, they got in and they realized, oh, I'm taking all these classes I'm not interested in. I'm having to paint still lifes. I'm having to draw the skeleton. I'm having to draw these boxes. This is so boring. I just want to draw my characters or, make my comic. But this is kind of part of it. And if you're not willing to put in the work at those stages, and, the kind of hard lesson is that you're probably also going to be one of the people that just decides to, it's maybe the career's not for you. And that's fine. I think if you get to that point and you're like, no, I just kind of want to draw my characters the way I want, and it becomes your hobby and you're really passionate about it, I think that's great. I think you don't have to make it your job because it's really hard. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who really want to do it too, who will, do the hard things every day. So you kind of have to be with them. If that makes sense. I don't know if that's a little bit harsh, but
no,
it's a tough industry.
I can't tell you how many times I tell my students to draw boxes when they want to draw epic fight scenes and they want to draw, crazy foreshortening. And I'm like, okay, well, foreshorten a box first.
Yeah.
Right?
And I was with them. I know how it feels. Yeah, I wanted to just do what I wanted to do. I abandoned perspective because I didn't like my teacher and I decided I don't need it. And then guess what? A year later, I was like, oh, crap. I want to draw this city, but I actually don't know perspective. So I had to go back. So you might as well just do it when you're young and when you have this wonderful teacher to help you. Because I had to go and do it on my own. So eventually you'll need it. You'll keep saying, no, I'm just going to do what I want. You need the foundations. And when I talked to my coworkers and I told them I was doing this stream and I was getting their, opinion on some topics and, I was asking them what do you think is important? And one of them is a teacher. And, for her, it's you got to put the effort in on the ground floor, Yep. You're building a structure of your skills and you have to have a really good foundation. And that's any field. especially in artistic field, music, right? Even cooking, right? You need to have really good foundations or everything's going to crumble. I know that's a really overused analogy, but it's very true.
Yeah, you mentioned cooking, and the one thing that I didn't think of when I learned cooking is like you have to, like, especially if you're making something like a stir fry, right? You have to put the vegetables in the right order so that some of them aren't mushy and some of them aren't hard, because they all cook differently, right? So as a beginner, you'd be like, no, I just want to make the stir fry. I'm just going to throw everything in a pot and put sauce on it. But like, no, you got to put this. There's a sequence to how things get done.
Yeah, and you can, like, if you throw it all in, you will end up with a stir fry. But the person who does it in the right order will have a better stir fry than you.
And they will be hired as the chef because they don't make mushy vegetables, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing. I think it applies to everything. But we are now at our Q&A. So put your questions in the chat if you have. I know we've collected a lot from our Discord audience already. So if you haven't joined the Discord yet, that's where the Wing Canvas team lives. Join our Discord, and there we've put up a thread there for questions, which we're going to pull from first. But yeah, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. All right. So I also want to introduce Kevin. Kevin here is behind the scenes, our lovely mod. So if you have any questions, we can put them up now. So there we go. Salty Shark says, where do you even join the industry?
Job portals, I guess. Where is the industry? It's everywhere. Yeah, I guess you just like go on. I mean, LinkedIn's not a great resource, but it's, you know, a good idea to find recruiters. If you can follow the recruiters for the companies that you like and follow artists who have the jobs that you like, a lot of them will post job listings, you know, go to the company's website directly and continue to check the job board. That's kind of the best way to find it.
Right.
Get involved in the industry before you get into the industry. So this can be like just on Instagram or whatever platform, following the artists that are in the industry, the artists who have the jobs that you want. That's also an important skill I didn't mention before, to see, you know, where you are up against sort of with the people who have the job that you want, by looking at their portfolios and looking at your portfolio and being really critical of like where you stand against them, and not being like harsh on yourself and, you know, or putting anybody down, but just being realistic of, okay, why is this painting that this professional did working really, really well? And what, you know, what can I do to get to this level? Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent on that question, but yeah, you can find them they're all over social media. It's very accessible to find the art directors and, you know, production designers of these shows and movies.
Cool. Okay, Mesmeric May says, in the art industry, one must constantly learn and apply the skills. How do you keep up with it? And how do you conduct your art studies?
Yeah, you do need to, you know, keep your art skills up. I think once you're kind of at a certain level, you maybe, like once I'm working, like I don't really do that much on the side because I'm painting from 9 to 5. So I am learning on the job. So once you have a job, you know, you can learn from the people around you, and, you know, maybe you have somebody whose backgrounds are getting approved faster than yours. You can kind of be like, okay, you can talk to them and be like, okay, what are you doing? Like, how can I make my backgrounds, you know, work more like yours? Or like, what are, you know, you see their personal portfolios, you can like talk to them about, you know, how they're upkeeping with their art. Let's see, how do you keep up with it? I think it's just kind of natural for me. Like, I don't really think I'm thinking about that too much. because for me, it's also a personal journey. Like I want my art to be as good as possible. I'm not necessarily thinking that I want to just keep up, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what do you do when you don't have the motivation to do something? It's a good question, Ellie.
If I'm not getting paid to do it, then I just won't do it. If I'm getting paid, that's the motivation, right? It's the paycheck. But seriously, if you're pushing yourself to do stuff you really don't want to do, and it feels like you're trekking through mud or quicksand, that's the recipe to burn out. So I would say, like, find a way to do something that you like. So it doesn't have to be like, if you're doing perspective and you find the boxes and you find like a city, like a basic city or something really boring, make it into something that's interesting. So maybe you like Minecraft. You can kind of do a Minecraft perspective practice, or, you can do the style of Animal Crossing, or you can do a style of an anime that you like. Just like twist it, like find the angle that works for you. And then hopefully you'll be more excited about it.
I definitely think the style exercises would have been very motivating, right? Like I want to paint this, but I'm going to paint it in the style of my favorite show. Yeah. Because you had to do a lot of self-motivating when you were in between jobs. So, yeah.
And also, like, for me, I really get a lot out of a structured school environment, even if I'm taking like a workshop or like a online class. Just having someone tell me what to do is kind of enough for me. Like, I love assignments. So for me, and I love having people around me, like classmates, to look at and like kind of want to live up to that. So for me, that's really motivating. So yeah, maybe find you've already got a great community right here. So maybe, diving more into it and maybe doing projects with other people could be also a good idea.
Yeah, that's good advice. Find an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay, this question is from Flighty Feathers. What is one thing you don't like about being in the industry, and one thing you learned from being in it?
Probably the contract work. Like it's not what's the word? Like, you don't have a consistent employment. I was unemployed for like 15 months, guys. It was unpleasant, but that's the way it goes. So I wish it was more stable, but that's what but I do love not having to work on the same thing for like a really long time. I love switching it up. I love getting on different shows. So that also, it's part of it, they kind of go in one and the same. They kind of go together. So I love hate that part of the industry.
Right. Okay. The MacGuffin, nice to see you back. If you just finished college, how likely is your chance to get a job in this field abroad? I think abroad, without any work experience.
What's abroad mean here? Like, are you trying to get into the Canadian industry, but you live in like Europe?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's be hard. Yeah, you're more likely to find something local. So in Canada, how things work is there's a lot of tax incentives that are local to the province, even the cities. So if you don't already have a working visa where you can show it to them and be like, hire me, I'm ready to go tomorrow, they're going to pick somebody else. Even with cities, there's tax incentives. There was a COVID tax incentive. I think it was in COVID. It might have been before that, to hire. And I think it's specific jobs. It might be animators. It might be other jobs. I don't really know. But they were given a tax incentive to hire outside of the GTA, right? So even like that can be, that's what they're thinking about. They're trying to, use that to their advantage as much as possible. So yeah, you kind of have to, there's already so many people looking for work right now that unless you're here with a really, really great portfolio and a visa in hand, it's going to be really hard. Unfortunately, I hate that that's reality. But yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. I mean, I think particularly we're speaking for Canada, right? Because
Yeah, speaking for Canada,
it's
Ontario
true. We get a lot of grants for hiring
Mhm.
fellow Canadians, and as a business owner or as the owner of a studio, right? They still have a bottom line
Mhm.
to make, and so they're going to take advantage of those tax incentives.
Yeah, and there's a lot of international studios, so just try to get as much sort of local work as you can. Keep building your portfolio. If you're able to get a visa to come to Canada, if that's where you want to work. If you want to work in Los Angeles, you also have to be local. Like they have a lot of tax incentives local to California. So you kind of have to be ready to go. There's so many amazing artists that are already local. You'd have to have the best portfolio if they were going to consider hiring you freelance, like the best. So it's tough.
Yeah.
And maybe you do, and then maybe you will have a chance.
Okay, so this question is from Roxy. So Roxy says, what other artists in the animation process do you work closest with? And are there any issues that you often run into that are caused by the storyboard artist, layout artist, etc.?
Yeah, it's all connected, right? So I'm a little isolated. Like I don't talk to them directly. It's usually the job of the supervisor. They go to the kind of kickoff meetings, talk with everyone, and make sure everyone's got what they need, and then bring that back to their teams. But for sure, sometimes we see something in the layout that needs to be adjusted, so we have to send it back to layout. Anything beyond what I do, I don't interact with. But the storyboards, even just the way that they've set up the backgrounds, like in their sketches, dictates a lot of what layout will do and then what we will do. So yeah, it's all connected.
Okay, so Evie says, do studios have similar naming systems for files, or are they all different? And is there a most common one?
I don't know. Let me see. Okay, so file names. When I was at Titmouse, there was a naming convention, but I'm pretty sure like even just it's already there in the file. You download the file with the name already, and it automatically updates versions when you upload. So you don't have to worry about that. If you're doing layouts, you do need to layer or file, or you have to name your layers, your groups, not the layers, the groups, so that they can be read by other, just for other people to use them. But there's no convention for it. So
Right.
that's the stuff that you don't need to know before you get a job. You'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Don't worry
Okay.
about that.
So Plepity says, what communication while working on projects ever an issue?
Not really. I guess the hardest thing with communication would be when things are still from home for me. I go to the office, but a lot of one of my coworkers is not in the city, and so like they're remote. So there's still a lot of remoteness that happens, and I've been on shows that have less communication than others with meetings and stuff, and so that can be a bit confusing. But as long as if you have questions, that's probably the biggest communication thing would be from your end of like, if there's something that's unclear, like making it clear. They don't know what you don't know. So you have to, ask questions, make things clear for yourself. But yeah. So not really. It can be hard working remote.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so more questions from Evie. What and how did you get your first job? I think we went over that, but was there any non-art related experience that helped you?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about these skills, but I think this is a great question because I came from a kind of non-art background for a while. Like I did my UBC stuff, and I found, even though I don't use, my degree in my day-to-day life, being taught about communication, like writing, I think is really important. Just like being a solid writer, being able to communicate messages well, critique, like learning how to take a critique and give a critique is hugely important. Those are like the main ones I would say. And just
Yeah.
life skills. Like when I went into my illustration program, there's a lot of people that had come straight from like high school or the art fundies. And I could just kind of tell the people who had done that versus the people who either had life experience or like me, university experience, because we just approached work differently. Like I kind of learned how to manage my time, how to decipher like what's important and what's not, um, how to take a critique and give a critique, and how to like
And
not be precious about things,
yeah, and
you know,
social skills, good social
social
skills.
skills too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that kind of life stuff. So, yeah, things come with time and age. Mhm.
Okay, so not to rush things. Okay, Funny K says, I want to divert to 3D animation. Do you know anything about 3D animation?
No.
No? Okay, so
Sorry, I can't help you.
we'll skip this
Okay.
question. Um, but I think Evie was also asking about connections.
Mhm.
So, how important were connections to just like to your career overall?
I think the thing with connections is you'll never fully know how big of a play, like how big of an impact they have been, because they're kind of silent. They're just kind of there. You can't see them. You can't like know what the other person is doing or thinking. But I think like making like people talk about networking, and I'm not a good networker. I still don't really know how to do it, but I think what I've learned is it's just about like trying to make friends. I think like, I go to the office now a lot, and if I see another artist there who's new, I'll chat with them and get to know them. And I'm not trying to like use them for my own gain. I genuinely want to know about them and like make a new friend. So I think if you approach it with that kind of mindset, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then we're going to talk about what's next for you. So I don't know if Kevin, you have one last question. Okay, from Big Snake Boss, are you still allowed to post your art if it never released?
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends on the studio, depends on how long it's been, depends on if you get an okay. Usually no. The studios are very precious about their IP and the things that they own, because another thing we haven't talked about is the art that you make on these shows. You don't own it. You sign a contract that says everything you make belongs to the studio. So you probably can't post it, unfortunately. Maybe after like 10 years, once like the NDA, I think there's like a legal limit or something. But by then it's like, I could do better anyway. So no, yeah, probably not.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we got some really, really good questions, and hopefully we answered some of them while we talked about Kelsey's journey. But yeah, next we're going to be doing a special event with Kelsey where you're going to get your background art critiqued. So many of our students love drawing characters. They love telling stories, and they love, drawing the things that bring them joy. But a lot of people struggle with backgrounds. A lot of people want to do them, but just have no idea where to start. So what advice would you give to people who are pretty skilled at doing other things, but are very afraid to draw backgrounds?
Well, here's the thing is I'm the opposite. I don't like doing characters. I think the backgrounds are the best part. I'm always so sad when I watch the show and the character's taking up the screen. I'm like, no, get out of the way. I want to see my background. But I mean, perspective. Like, if you know how to do perspective, you can like draw anything, So probably go back to basics. Start simple, Maybe if you're drawing a character, I mean, it's hard to say this without kind of an example to go off of. But maybe don't make the character the main focus and just like have them look little in the background, and then start with the background and then put the character in the background, right? Because sometimes you're like, oh, you have a character and it's like, me on this screen is taking up the main part, and all you're gonna have in the background are these little clouds, and that's not really a background. So you could do that. Like that's one way to do it. The other option is to let the background sing, do a little tiny like Ghibli mini character in the background, and focus on making the perspective right, put them in at the end, following the perspective. Could be something.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So your perspective, if you want to get better at background art, work on your perspective. If you want to get better at your character art, work on your figure drawing.
Yeah,
And-
that's pretty good. I mean, even listen, there's perspective in figure drawing.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Boxes in space.
Everything around us exists in perspective. It's how we see the world. It's sort of a mathematical art like version of how we see the world, you know? Like perspective kind of isn't real, but it is in 2D. It's a really complicated and beautiful thing.
All right. So if you are struggling with perspective or you want a critique on your background art, you can scan the QR code to submit your artwork and join our Discord. If you join our Discord, you will be able to be a part of our Art Nerd community and be able to chat with other people who are going through the same thing, the same journey as you, people who can keep you accountable. Wonderful community. And Kelsey will be doing her workshop and her critique session on our Discord. So join the Discord to stay informed on when that's happening. And thank you so much, Kelsey, for all of your insights and all of your time sharing your beautiful art with us. I am so happy to see your success. And I remember in 9 years ago when you were painting your first
don't say that,
life.
guys. Don't say that. I know. I know.
I mean, for those of you who just joined, I'm gonna go back to which slide was it? The one where we see your your beginning and then your end. So the journey is never really done.
Yeah, and like when I remember like painting that and I was like, this is the best thing I've ever painted, right? So same with that Chris Pine charcoal drawing. I was like, I am a art god. Like I am a genius. That was my thought. So
yeah,
and it, like for what I had at the time, it wasn't bad. And it's just growth. And I think it's also important not to compare yourself to other people who are in different parts of their journey. Like I've talked a lot about like, looking at professionals and comparing yourself if you want to get their job, but that's kind of only if you're there. Like I really think there's also a time and place for shutting off the world around you and just going on your own journey. I think comparison and too much critique too early can be detrimental to your motivation. So sometimes you just got to shut it off and just exist in your bubble and put your head down.
And remember, when Kelsey painted this landscape on the left, it was her best work. I remember how proud you were of it and how proud I was of you when you painted it. And
I'm
now,
gonna be honest, I think it looks better in person. It's hard to photograph oil paintings.
That's all right.
It looks better in person.
But lots of progress, and you will get there. If you are a beginner and you're listening to this, it may seem like it's so far away, but it's not. You just have to keep going. Remember the perseverance, the passion, and the grit, and just follow your heart.
Yeah. Keep with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, don't miss your opportunity to get critique from Kelsey. So I'm going to show you guys that QR code again. Scan this code to submit your artwork for the critique. We're also going to post it in the comments of this video. In the description of this video. And hopefully we will see you on our Discord. Thank you so much, Kelsey. We really appreciate it.
It's been fun.
Right.
Hopefully you guys have gotten a little bit out of this.
All right, guys. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.